something that took me a little while to figure out is when you first hear Dutch, they have a lot of guttural G's or CH, and that's, I guess, to our ears, or to mine at least, that was the first thing that hit you. You're like, wow, they're just clearing their throat the whole time, So, you're saying something like goeiemorgen, you just hear the ch, and you go, whoa, what are they saying? But as I was trying to learn the language and got a little more familiar with it, I realized I'd say the hardest part for an American to learn Dutch is not necessarily the guttural part. Once you get that down, it's fairly straightforward. But I would say it's actually the way they do their vowels. The way that, because especially a traditional American accent is kind of like, if you compare it to like those in the UK or something, it's a lot harder. We just, our R's, or we're like biting and kind of chewing on our words, just to kind of give it an illustration. But whereas in the Netherlands, they round their vowels. There's more sounds like ow or ooh, or I can't even do it right half the time, but they're just softer. And it's it's difficult to figure it out till you start trying. And once you get the basics of the language down, I spent 2 years trying to work on just the simple vowel combinations to get them just right in different words. Still haven't got it perfect. But that, I'd say, is one of the things that sets you apart as an American. They hear you, if you've seen the film The Best 2 Years, they have one of the elders there. They just have the worst American accent you could possibly imagine. So, he'll be like, goeiemorgen mevrouw, mijn collega en ik. And it's just so hard, and just like he's just rocks falling out of his mouth. Whereas when a Dutch person says it rounds it off. It's goeiemorgen and it mevrouw, and they do different things with their R's to just make it just sounds more natural. And so that, we've gone on long enough about that, but that's basically I'd say the biggest difference. And one of the things that catches most people up is those vowel sounds. The Netherlands used to be kind of part of France. They were conquered a few times, and they have a lot of French influence in actually in their language. It is a Germanic language, but they use a lot of words that are just French. And then as you go further south into Belgium, the north half, again, even more French influence. The southern half of Belgium speaks French already. And so you can just see kind of the transition over the years. I forget the dates exactly, so I won't try to throw them out, but when they actually split, the countries did. And it just made a big difference to the development of the country. Heck, even the flag for the Netherlands is the same colors as the French flag, just reversed in orientation. They make it a point to learn other languages, and those coming in aren't really expected to know Dutch. They just assume it. They assume that you won't if you're a tourist. And like those coming from other countries, it's always a struggle to get them to learn, because I've met people from other countries, both in Belgium and the Netherlands, that have lived there for 20 years and they hardly speak any Dutch. They can hardly, get a few simple sentences, not very well said, just because they don't necessarily need to. You can get around with English. You don't really integrate yourself into society, but you can manage. And for them, that's good enough. And so it's just interesting to see how their culture is. I'd say if you really want to become a part of it or understand it more, you really have to make a point to learn their language, learn the way they do things. I don't know. If you think of the Netherlands or Holland, for a lot of people that know stuff about it, that haven't necessarily been there already, you get kind of the image of, okay, what do I know? There's windmills, there's canals, there's, wooden shoes, that kind of thing. And that is, you have that throughout the Netherlands, but it's especially typical of Holland, which is a province. And especially North Holland, that's where they have Amsterdam. And that's where they'll have the vast majority of the windmills and the canals, and just that kind of the traditional old-fashioned culture, that kind of thing. And for me, that's what I served in Alkmaar, which is north of Amsterdam. The Netherlands is shaped kind of like, well, can't do it cameras like this, but like this, like a hand. You have an arm that goes up here, and the bay is in here, and Amsterdam's down here, and Alkmaar is just right up here. And it's definitely my favorite city of anyone that I've been to. It's beautiful. It has a similar feel to Amsterdam, but not quite as big, so it's more relaxed. And they have many canals that go through there in that area. It's kind of just a wetland. And then windmills all over the place. And they preserve the windmills as like historic landmarks. And they actually will have some people that live in the windmills. They kind of sign on that when they live in there that they'll take care of it, and they have to take some lessons. I talked to some people who did it. And, in that area, they have one day a year or a couple days a year where the public is allowed to go in and just tour it and just look around, and they'll tell you all about it. And that's just part of what they sign up for when they become molenaars. That's what they call it. And it's really cool. And that's also, they have in Alkmaar something called the cheese market, which tourists will come all over to see. It's like they dress up in the old-fashioned clothes how they used to, because that was a cheese marketing area. They'd come together on the city square or the plain, and they just have big wheels of cheese and get them in carts, and they weigh them, and so they put on a big show for you, and then you can also buy cheese. And just the whole city center is just gorgeous. It's all old-fashioned building. They have a couple of huge churches, like Protestant churches, I believe, and it's just gorgeous. So picturesque, is that the word? And there's so much to see there. Especially like me, I like nature, and I like just seeing the views. It's flatland, but they have trees, they have different waterways and stuff that you can go explore, you can bike through. And that's also in that area where you have the tulip fields. From about Hilversum area, or not Hilversum, excuse me, Haarlem, which is just kind of southwest of Amsterdam, up north all the way to the tip of the hand, not the hand, but the arm of the Netherlands. They have tulip fields. And so about 1 month of the year, I'd say, because I served during the springtime in that area, 1 month of the year, you just have fields and fields of tulips. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous to see. That's also, they have like a tulip garden there, Keukenhof. If you've seen the best 2 years, they actually have some clips from inside that garden. And yeah, babbled about that. But that is definitely, if you want to go and see Holland, if you want to go in, and they have museums, they have all sorts of places you can see, all within about an hour of each other. That's a place to go, in my opinion. That's considered North Holland, that province. All of that down to Amsterdam. And then when you get to like Rotterdam, that's South Holland. And they have other provinces as well. But it's gorgeous. They have wonderful people there. Absolutely wonderful. And there's so much to do. There's just so much to see. It's great. So what the differences are in living in the Netherlands compared to in the States, I'd say one of the things that hit me most, one of the first things, is that the idea of, I guess, space is what makes the biggest difference. The Netherlands is very small. It's about a quarter the size of the state of Washington, which is, I think, less than that because in the state of Utah. And the American mentality, especially in a lot of states where it's, you have your land and you have your area, and it's all very, not necessarily secluded, but separate. Whereas in the Netherlands, they're very used to sharing space. And that's just, I'd say because of the geographic influence, it influences the culture, just how they live and interact with each other. They're used to the fact that their house shares a wall with this house, and this side shares a wall with this house. And that's very common. There are some freestanding houses, but the majority of people they live in the cities, they share space. They don't have much of a yard. It's just a lot smaller, but that's normal for them. Also distances. If we want to go anywhere, basically we drive a car most of the time for the majority of people, especially out in the West, I'd say. But in the Netherlands, there's a ton of biking and a ton of walking as well. People also have cars, but it's very common if you want to go shopping, you jump on your bike and they have like saddlebags on the sides, basically, and they'll go there and they'll shop for 3 or 4 days worth of groceries, and then just bring it home on their bike. They have a really good centralized public transportation system: trains, buses, metros, trams. You have one card that you can get that has a little electronic chip in it, and you load it up with money, and it works with pretty much every system. So you can travel from A to B wherever you want, just checking in and out. Really straightforward, simple, and effective. They've got it down. I think because it's just smaller, it's easier to manage everything. They do a good job with it. The Netherlands is a because they have a lot of open policies, and they're also very fluent in English, I'd say the vast majority of people I talk to could speak fairly good English at least, if not better. And because of that, a lot of companies will choose to, set up shop or set their headquarters in the Netherlands. So it's popular that way, especially in The Hague. There's a lot of political offices and everything where people come. And I'm not a pro on all that, but I know that it's popular in that way. The companies will outsource there. When you go shopping there, it's kind of your job to get most everything done. Where, for example, you bring your own bags. Most of the stores won't provide you with a bag. If you do, you buy each one. They're a little more thrifty that way. They also, just with customer service and stuff, you do a lot more yourself, I find. As for example, if you go to a restaurant, there they don't do tips like we do here. So it's just a little bit different mentality of how that works out. When I mentioned earlier about how they'll shop for 3 or 4 days or less. A lot of times their breads and different foods like that, a lot more fresh, less preservatives, so it'll go bad quicker. So they shop more frequently and they buy smaller amounts. My family, we used to go to town and buy food for weeks, and come back all in the van. But over there, it's just so much smaller. And the diet is also just, on average, they eat less, I guess you could say, than in American portions at restaurants. That they serve you less, and that's normal to them. A lot of members and people I talked to that had been to the States, they always commented on how huge all the portion size was. I went to get a drink at McDonald's and it was gigantic. And it's just the difference in the way it's developed. It's just not normal there to have huge portion sizes, comparatively. One of the things that I love about them, just that I saw in my time there, is they work, especially the native Dutch people, they work really well in a society together. They all they do their part, and they're pretty conscious of the effect they have on the community as a whole. Obviously not everyone, but that's a general trend that I noticed. Just for an example, they do pretty well at recycling. That's something that they make a big point of. They have lots of facilities and different things to service that, and then they're just aware of people around them. They don't want it. They won't ever impose on you. Sometimes you might get the wrong impression that they're not friendly because they won't necessarily just strike up a random conversation all the time. But if you ask for help, they're more than willing to help you. If you need to find something or you just need help figuring something out on the street. I've had so many nice people, and then when you do get to know them, you have a reason to talk to them. A friend of theirs, they're so hospitable, really nice people, and they go out of their way to they love sharing about the country, and they love sharing about just things that they love in the area. A lot of them have lived in the cities or the areas that they lived. If they lived there for a while, they're really aware of what there is to do there. Not only what to do, but just the history and the culture. They feel a part of it. I think that also does exist in some places in the States, but I notice it's really prevalent there, and it's interesting because it's such a small area. But just every area that they live, they love and they take care of it, and for me that's something great to see. And they have art all over their cities, very interesting art. It's well groomed, well maintained, especially in the Netherlands, and it's just nice to see how much they care about it and will help you out as well. You've probably heard of the Dutch Indies, or in South America and some of the islands there. They colonized that in the 1800s, and so they have influences of food from over there, because the transportation, the different food products that they'd import. Also, they're definitely influenced a lot by other countries' foods. They have a lot of foreign recipes that they cook. In Indonesia, they had colonies there, so they have influences from there as well. So you have, like I say, I'm not an expert on exactly how much they got from there, but I've eaten a lot of Indonesian dishes while I was over there, cooked by Dutch people, native people. Also, the traditional Dutch plate, you could say, or the meal, it tends to be more I guess you could say more simple foods. You know, they have a lot potatoes and different types of vegetables. They have, you've probably heard this from other people. They have, you know, dishes called stamppot. It's like a potato mixture. They'll throw in kale or sausage or carrots or whatever else, and mix it up. Really good. I like it. I'm a fan. They have, during the holidays, they'll have different festive foods. They have one that's called sugar bread, if I'm not mistaken, and it basically is just a really sweet loaf of bread with like raisins or something else inside, and in the center they have, I don't know what you call it, but it's like a almond butter type, and it's just a big round, fills up the center of it, and so when you slice it, the center of your bread, delicious, really good. They'll serve that. They also serve something called olibola, which is kind of like a donut. It's just a donut. It's a ball of dough that they'll deep fry with powdered sugar, and they serve that during New Year's. It's tradition, you know. They'll buy a bag and eat them on the New Year's. They'll just set up little stands in the city, and you can buy them. Yeah, those are some of the festive foods.